30 seconds and counting.
Aye.
Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds.
Aye. Fee, 5-4, nothing to a giant. Waited my turn, call it perfect time and trust the most high. Got the stars aligning, I was tapped in. I've been strategizing, dreams coming true. I've been fantasizing while you criticize. Pay attention to the signs, symbolize. Feel like a legend, they go idolize. Ayy, I'm a hero, wear my cape. Independent leader made a way. I'm the people's voice, hip parade.
Hello and welcome to Inspired Earth this week. We have another special. This is one that I've been looking forward to for a long time. I've wanted to make it for a long time. It kind of goes between many different things. And we had to cover the Tesla stuff first, I felt like, before we could move on to this lunar type of operation that we're going to be talking about today, because they are so interlinked. So today we're going to be talking about the moon, and specifically some photos of the moon that really kind of changed my life, and I ended up finding them again, or at least some of them. So I'm able to share some of that with you guys, along with some extra stuff I've been able to tie in with it that is all interlinked. So that's really fantastic. I think I have about 20 photos and 3 videos that we're going to go over. And I'll just start by saying that I know I've said this before, so I'll keep it quick. When I was younger, I had seen a gallery of photos from NASA.gov, and it contained structures on the moon of various types, mainly tall tower type of things, and piping, and a lot of tracks going back and forth, or what I had interpreted as tracks, because they looked they were like parallel and perfect and driving around. And some of it looked like it had equipment and stuff as well. And I had lost that into time. And now, a couple months ago, I was able to find a TV show that had some of these photos with it. It doesn't have all the photos, but it has some of the photos that I had seen with that gallery in it. I had suspected that this was a whistleblower within NASA, like Richard Hoagland talks about, and many others, and we kind of saw this with the Border Patrol website, I'm pretty sure recently, that these videos just randomly got uploaded to borderpatrol.gov website. I don't know if that's the website, but their official one. And nobody really had like an official statement about it. And that sort of same thing happened with NASA, that all of this stuff just appeared on the website, and there was no like announcement or press release or anything like that. It just was on the website and then was gone later. And unfortunately I never saved it, but today I'm going to show you guys some of the things that I saw, and we're going to have some experts that were on this TV show that's really old that I seem to have found online, which is a really big score. And this TV show has some of the pictures on there. So yeah, let's all stay tuned for that. So I'm going to do this slightly out of order, and I have somebody that I'm going to play an audio clip of before we play a video clip, and it should interest everybody. This was when I got to ask one of the people directly involved in this sort of stuff, what's going on? And he kind of has a whopper to answer.
Dr. Brandenburg, I appreciate it. Very interesting show tonight. I wanted to note that Edgar Mitchell went to the moon and came back and went into Hinduism and started studying the Mahabharata. And
that's right.
In the Mahabharata, it says that we got distracted by technology, think like cell phones and stuff like that. But we were so wrapped up in our technology that a bunch of cataclysms came, and we didn't do anything to stop the cataclysms from coming, and some of them were from us. And he went into Graham Hancock and Ancient Apocalypse, all that sort of stuff. Also, I got ChatGPT access today, and I just happened to ask, how should we look for nuclear isotopes on Mars? Because I was just curious and messing around. And it said that we should look in sediment layers and craters and lava flows, and specifically under the ice, because Mars lost its atmosphere and magnetic field, so that could destroy the isotopes. So we need to look under the ice to have them protected from the solar radiation. And that it was even giving me like the methods that we would use to detect that. And it said that a bunch of nuclear explosions all at once could have led to an EMP and a cascading failure of the magnetic field. But I just thought that was all really interesting. My question was that do you have any thoughts on people that have reported glass domes on Mars or the moon, or any thoughts on Venus?
Okay, John, go ahead.
I was part of the Clementine mission to the moon, but you know what? They wouldn't let us look at the pictures.
You're kidding me.
I better not say anything more. It was a Defense Department mission to the moon. There, draw your own conclusions.
That's amazing. I mean, what did they say to you folks when they wouldn't show you the pictures?
Oh, well, we were all just contractors. I was a deputy to the mission manager. Think of him as Marshall Dillon, and I was Festus.
Jeez.
And he paid me a great compliment. He said I was his Tiger team. He could sick me on problems that no one else could solve, and I could get them solved somehow. But, it was just, anyway, it was a Defense Department mission to the moon. So I've been told not to talk about it.
Well, they didn't want you to see something, John.
Well, we found water, and that's important. So it was a very positive outcome, and the mission was very successful. We had NASA ride along, and they published a whole bunch of pictures that they found. But while we were doing it, well, anyway, I'll just
leave it at that, huh?
I've actually been told, Brandenburg, don't talk about the moon. You can talk about Mars all you like. If you watch the movie Mysterians by the...
Oh, yeah. My dad used to take me to those movies.
Oh, yeah. The Mysterians, they have alien bases on the far side of the moon, and UFO women getting abducted and hybridizations with aliens and everything. It's all in that movie in 1957.
Yep.
And the same guy who made the Godzilla movies. Great movie.
So true.
Long, deep tracks into the lunar terrain. And at least one of these objects apparently had the ability to move in mystifying ways.
If you follow these back to their point of origin, the one in the foreground rolled up and out of a crater. To me, this photograph was, in my mind, beyond any doubt, the smoking gun of activity on the moon, inexplicable activity on the moon.
Indications that NASA and possibly the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency were determined to keep such baffling lunar activity a secret can be seen in the harrowing story of petroleum engineer Vito Sakari. With a copy of Somebody Else's on the Moon in hand, he and a friend stormed the gates of NASA's Houston Space Flight Center shortly after the Apollo missions ended, demanding to see sharp versions of the pictures the book contained. But he was stonewalled from the start.
There were endless meetings, endless numbers of forms we had to fill out, but it was clear they were trying to discourage us. They didn't want us to go any further. So we got back on the phone and we called them back and said, you know what? We got this book. We're going to duplicate 1,000 copies. I don't care if we got to drop them in there by helicopter. And we're spreading this information around. We got a call back and said, all right, we'll make arrangements for you to have access to these photographs.
The images he was permitted to view in a high-security archive revealed things literally out of this world. Sakari was overwhelmed
We were escorted into this room, and it's like 5 or 6 of these full-length tables. Turned out to be more than 1,000 pictures. But the resolution was very high, and at that moment, the whole occasion turned. It became almost solemn, because we knew what we were looking at, and we knew what it meant. There are structures there. There were pipelines. The bridges were clear as a bell. There was machinery. There were tank tracks, what appeared to be tank tracks. When I looked at those clear images, we knew that we were looking at an existing, or at least an ancient, technology. These things didn't grow. These things were manufactured. These things were built, and they were built on a huge scale.
A massive scale that suggests a race of beings we might not be able to successfully confront, should we have to.
If hostile extraterrestrials are on the surface of the moon and are planning some sort of assault on the Earth, if we're dealing with creatures, with entities that are far in advance of us, I often wonder, would we even stand a chance?
As we've just seen, there is growing evidence of an alien presence in our skies, in the solar system, and most shockingly, on the surface of the moon. Investigators point to this NASA photo taken by the Apollo 16 astronauts and can identify what appears to be a huge fortress consisting of a towering cylindrical structure positioned next to what might be a gun turret extending out for more than a mile in the Mare Crisium region. Is this proof from NASA's own archive of an alien base existing on the side of the moon that always faces Earth? And might this base even include a massive satellite dish? Experts see the dish and its location as a cause for alarm.
If we, the general public, can see this imagery on the surface of the moon, then it's clear that military and government agencies can as well. They might well be sort of quaking in their boots, wondering who's built these structures, where are they from, what do they want?
If what research...
As well, I had to mention something that was super important. Los Alamos Scientific Laboratory, September 1973. I think that they were working on this even before 1973, but this is System and Cost Analysis for Nuclear Subterranean Tunneling Machine. And it's not your average, everyday, boring machine. And it says that they're $1969, and that there was multiple different types of stuff. So I can post this as well. It's a really interesting read, but here we have the photos of like how it works. And there's water that comes in the back, and then they have a nuclear powered reactor in the middle, and on the front they have these mechanical cutters that, and this is figure 1 of type 1, and then number 2 is type 2. So these are thermal stress fracturing penetrators, and it gets it so hot. This nuclear reactor uses electricity to get the front end so hot that it melts all of the terrain, rather than digging it out and going and like putting it outside the tunnel. This boring machine gets it so hot it melts everything, vitrifies the ground, turns it to liquid, and then turns it into glass as it's moving along. So you have a glass tube going through whatever you're building it with. And it says that they can build absolutely massive stuff super quickly with it. And all of this different notes and specific stuff about it. Down here they have all of this different math about percentages of the strength of the soil compared to the diameter, compared to how much water you need, yada yada yada. And basically, here's the interesting part about it making a glass forming section. I mean, that in itself is fascinating. But what did Richard C. Hoagland say about glass? He said that glass that's made in zero gravity orbit or near zero gravity, I can't remember if it was absolute zero gravity or near zero gravity, but glass made in space is extremely hard because the atoms in the crystal organize and form structurally different than they do on the planet due to gravity, and that increases the structural strength of glass. And I know that sounds whack and dumb, but lo and behold, like a decade or two after he said that, NASA comes out and says that they can make glass in zero gravity that's super strong. And they didn't credit Richard C. Hoagland. They didn't mention him, but he said it way beforehand. So here we have this nuclear type of boring machine that I say that we did bring to the moon. I think that we absolutely did bring one of these to the moon, at least one of them, and we put it on tracks, and that is what some of these tracks we saw on the moon driving around was, at least getting one of these into position. Because you see some of these tracks, or at least I did, like many of them coming in and out of a cave entrance. And I just suspect that we put a whole lot of stuff in there. There's probably multiple factions on the moon, would be my guess. But I wanted to share this with you guys, that it's absolutely real, and here's a bunch of more math. And this is just the preliminary one, right? And this is the American stuff. Who knows if the Soviets ever came up with something different. Here they have schematic of portal power and cooling systems. And if you look at all this, like the schematics here, and you were to go back and look at the pictures we sent, they kind of look the same. Kind of look similar, the schematics and stuff. Here it's talking about control systems, cost analysis, sealed excavation face, that they could seal it, and there would be no leakage, which would be really good in a space environment, right? Completely sealed tunnel immediately. I mean, it's literally sounds like it's designed for outer space. I mean, not specifically, but it could be extremely useful, and then perfected for that. And I think that this is also what they use for a lot of continental building materials. And if you notice, all of this stuff is about 1969, and this came out 1972, 1973, which was the same time that the Apollo missions stopped traveling there. See if we can get that on screen. Here, let me read this. Actually, I found this little thing. This was from 1971. Thermal boring device melts away granite, from the New York Times. A boring device that can melt its way through granite at least 30 inches an hour has been developed by Los Alamos Scientific Laboratory. On Thursday, in a trial run, it penetrated 12 feet through rock. It is hoped that such devices, called subterraneans, I don't know how to pronounce that, I'm sorry. It just looks like subterranean, but slightly different. We ultimately melt 20 to 30 miles deep, piercing the Earth's crust to an underlying mantle. That's really, really deep. The horizontal tunneling potential of Los Alamos subterranes also has excited the interest of federal highway engineers. The device being tested melts a hole 2 inches in diameter, a version that bores a hole 4 inches wide to its test depth of 1,000 feet in the middle of next year. The current model depends on electric heating, whose power is the demand is the same as 30 light bulbs of 100 watts each. That's not very much. As models of larger dimensions are built, it is expected a level will be reached beyond which nuclear power will be more economical than conventional power. So here's what you would need to do this. You would need a miniaturized nuclear reactor, okay? So you'd need a mini nuke reactor. And right now, our government, the United States government, is trying to deploy mini nuclear reactors across all of these different bases across the world. Chinese have said that they've already completed their miniaturized nuclear reactor for their space base and that it's ready to go. But here's where we always come back to eventually. From what I've been researching and from what I've found, it seems that the Nazis had miniaturized nuclear reactors. And I know some people are not going to believe that, but from everything that I've been able to research, and this is not TikTok videos and like just dumb stuff, this is like actual research, shows that it's not in the history books, but that the Germans did have that stuff. And that there is physical evidence. If you go and look at the factories and places that these pieces of equipment were used at, you see physical remains. Even in one case, the actual reactor itself is still in place. And it's not in the history books. And allegedly, it's the third one that they had. It's not even the first one. But so if it's physically there and it's not in the history books, what else is physically there or been lost to time that's not in the history books? So yeah, that's pretty interesting. But it says that, just to keep on going, subway tunnels sighted, because this is so interesting. Yesterday, John Rowley, the project leader, said in a telephone interview that the applicability of such boring methods to vehicular tunnels and other large shafts remains to be demonstrated. Published by the laboratory, discusses the possibility of using such thermal boring to produce tunnels for subways to transport fluidized solids. I wonder if that's what we saw on the moon. Wastes, water, or oil, or storage of hazardous materials, any of those we could have seen too. One advantage of the process is that it leaves tunnel walled with impermeable obsidian-like glass. The hot-nosed borer, pressed down by a weight for several tons, melts the rock at about 220 degrees, 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. The molten rock is then pressed aside, being forced into pores and cracks, some of them produced by pressure itself. But some of the rock flows back the descending shaft and hardens into a glass sheath of great strength. Thus, in such boreholes and tunnels, it would not be necessary to provide concrete lining. So they wouldn't need to do any sort of aftercare for this thing. The borer has been a laboratory tested on a variety of hard rocks. At present, the highway engineers are interested in using a modification of such device to bore exploratory holes along the route of projected tunnel, sampling the rock as they go. Boring such holes with rotary drills is made difficult by their tendency to turn downward instead of boring horizontally. This effective rotary action should not apply to a thermal system. Furthermore, Mr. Rowley talks of the possible use of inertial guidance, such as that on missiles and submarines, to keep the unit moving in the right direction. And the idea of using heat to melt a path in the depths of the Earth has been discussed for some time. In the 1950s, Dr. Vladimir V. Belousov, leading Soviet authority on the Earth's interior, half facetiously discussed a probe that would use heat from onboard nuclear reactor and roam under remote control through the Earth's interior. Which is fascinating because the Russians today have this thing called the Poseidon weapon that's an autonomous nuclear tsunami maker that just remotely controlled roams around the ocean. So it's fascinating. They were saying that they were trying to make a basically Earth torpedo that would roam around underground. It's really crazy. 1954, similar idea was put forth in the science fiction work Tom Swift Jr. and his atomic Earth Blaster. Currently, Mr. Rowley said several research organizations are exploring the possibility of thermal tunneling. One is Bell Labs, which I mean, apparently is working with the government for a long time. According to Colonel Corso, if you believe that story, the government gave them this technology from ET crash reverse engineering, which I have mixed feelings about Colonel Corso's story, but I do think that it's possible that that type of activity did occur. A representative of the Deep Sea Drilling Project, operated by a consortium headed by the Scripps Institute of Oceanography, is in New Mexico to examine the possibility of using such drills to pierce the ocean floor. What makes the thermal method particularly applicable to drilling holes of extreme depth is freedom from any need to haul out material from the hole. Another advantage cited by Los Alamos Group is the tunnel can be bored in any shape or desire, square, triangle, or flat. With the funding of large-scale projects, the scientists feel subterranean could be used for short-term applications as development progress that subterranean technology could be fully developed within 10 to 15 years. So this was like, what was it? 1971, and they said within 10 to 15 years it'd be fully developed. It's very, very interesting. And it's so weird that this came out when we officially stopped going back to the moon. I wonder if we just got technology that was better than all these rockets, and we were going to the moon and doing who knows what. I think we were trying to figure out what the heck was going on out there, and then we brought a bunch of stuff along the way and tried to build as much as we could. Whenever Dr. Brandenburg said that he was worried about, or that they thought that they were worried about the buildings being constructed, being expanded, I think that he was telling the truth about that. That was like one of the few things that I feel like he was telling the truth in the TV show about. So that's very interesting. And when it talks about dropping the cost of underground projects, that would explain why there's these massive underground facilities, possibly on the moon as well, but definitely on the Earth, that they can build on the cheap. You know, we think of these massive underground facilities as being really expensive, but according to them, when they got this thing, it all changed.